Toys in the 1970s were just different, and especially so when you compare them to anything out on the market today. Many of these older toys required kids to use their imagination, which really led to kids learning how to be innovative and great problem solvers. However, there were some toys that were out on the market that were simple and fun. In today's video, we will have a look back at some of the 1970s toys you'll never see again. The show and tell phonograph was made by GE, and it was designed to make kids feel like they had their very own television. Not only did this phonograph play records, but it also had a film strip that would display images while kids listened to the music. This was about as high-tech as it got in the 70s, and kids were thoroughly entertained by this toy. Melody Mike was a little bit of a goofy-looking musical toy. He sort of looked like a Muppet, but he was very interactive. If you pressed his nose, the top of his head opened where you could then see his funny-looking teeth. They were actually 8 keys that you could press to play musical notes, and for parents, this toy was quite obnoxious. It was really the type of toy that you wanted to get your nephew or niece so that they could pester your sibling when you weren't there to do it yourself. The Coleco Quiz Whiz was a computer answer game that was a fun way for parents to get their kids to learn. Each cartridge had 1,001 questions to answer. There were dozens of cartridges available in a variety of subjects such as television, people, music, and places. If you were around in the 1970s, then you certainly understand how big Farrah Fawcett was. She was the dream girl for many boys, and she had the biggest selling poster of all time. But even young women wanted to have her hair, which is why Farrah Fawcett even had her own shampoo that you could buy. At this point, it seemed like nothing was off limits, which is why you could see this next item. It wasn't really a toy, but I bet a lot of young boys had it. The Farrah Fawcett Major's beanbag hit the market, and it had the same exact image that was used on her best-selling poster. There's no doubt that this beanbag gave a lot of boys some sweet dreams about Farrah. Pong was one of the first commercially successful video games. The Atari Pong was released in the summer of 1972. It was a tennis-like game where the player used a simple controller to move an in-game paddle to volley a small ball back and forth with another player or the computer-controlled user. Points were won when a volley wasn't returned. This two-dimensional game became pretty popular, and by 1974, Atari had sold more than 8,000 units. The Lemon Twist is probably a toy that most parents today would consider to be too dangerous for their kids. 90s kids had a little bit safer version of it called the Skip It. But the Lemon and Lemon Twist was filled with rocks, and it was on a string. Basically, you would put your foot through the loop and then swing the lemon around. Each time the lemon would swing around, you had to jump over it. If you somehow missed the lemon and it hit your shin or ankle, then it was a lot like Kathy Bates being your #1 fan in the movie Misery. Dip a Flower was something that you could see in Christmas catalogs in the 1970s, and it was aimed at little kids. This starter kit would allow you to make magnificent floral bouquets, which sounds great until you realize it was basically a box of chemicals. What could go wrong? If this was out today, then they would probably want kids to wear chemical gloves and an OSHA-approved mask. But back then, parents didn't care if the kids fried their lungs. Just be quiet in your room while Daddy smokes his cigarettes. Today, kids have cool Nerf guns, which don't hurt at all when you get hit by them. The actual darts are pretty soft and made of foam. But in the 1970s, we had a predecessor to the Nerf dart guns, and it was called the Disco Punch. That name is definitely fitting for the 70s, right? These handheld toy guns shot miniature plastic frisbees through the air. If you were a good enough aim, you could nail your little sister right in the eye. Safety just wasn't a consideration for little 6-year-olds. Kids today enjoy doing crafts, and it certainly wasn't any different in the 70s. There were several different craft kits that were marketed towards young kids and probably shouldn't have been. Remember the wood burning kit? You could heat up this little pen and basically it was like a branding iron. Sure, you could etch your art into wood, but you could also seriously burn yourself or try your hand at burning other things around the house. One toy that you may have forgotten about was the ghost gun from Hasbro. This little toy was pretty ingenious and different from anything else that was out on the market. It was basically a little projector light that you would use in a dark or low light room. You would load these little film strips in it and it would project different ghost images on the wall. Then you would aim the pistol portion of the gun and try to hit the ghost. When you pulled the trigger, it would use a needle to pierce the film and you could see exactly where you shot on the projected image. It was hours upon hours of fun. Vertibird was a 70s toy that often found its way underneath the Christmas tree if you begged hard enough. This was a fly-it-yourself indoor helicopter and it wasn't anything real fancy, but it was fun for a little while. The plastic helicopter was powered by a motor located in the central base which drove a rod connected between the two. The Vertibird was somewhat of a delicate toy and it usually didn't last too long before it broke. Even if it did not break, kids usually grew tired of playing with this toy after watching it spinning in a circle for a couple months. Merlin was a toy that was invented by a former NASA employee and his family. It was a handheld electronic game which featured tic-tac-toe, music machine, and echo as well as other challenges. The Merlin definitely paved the way for future handheld games. If you were around when Star Wars came out in 1977, then you certainly know how quickly it became mega popular. There were all sorts of items and products available, but one of the most interesting ones was the Escape from Death Star game. It featured all of your favorite Star Wars characters and was hours of fun. If you were to play with it now, then it would definitely transport you back to a galaxy far, far away. Many kids today just do not understand how we got so much joy out of these old board games. The Fisher-Price music box was another item that felt a little high-tech to kids in the 1970s. Basically, you wind this thing up and then listen to what it had with it. For kids, it was sort of a predecessor to the Walkman. But think of it as not much more than a simple music box for kids, and then it had a little window on it that had a rotating panoramic cartoon picture. It was simple but fun, and a lot of kids had these. Many of these 70s toys would be pretty boring to kids growing up today. For the most part, their toys require batteries and are most often connected with a phone or tablet. Sadly, kids don't play with toys quite like they did in the 70s. If you happen to have any of these old toys, then I'm sure you'll understand what a treasure they are. Don't be afraid to pull them out and play with them with your family. You never know, they may just love them. What were some of your favorite toys when you grew up? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.